Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and again I'm working on those reels that Scott had sent in. This one is a Japanese-made Garcia 3800, and this one is a follow-on to the 308 reel. And a couple of things changed on it, so I thought, well, maybe I would go ahead and do a video to show you the differences in those reels and show you how to take this one apart and service it if you have it, and if not, learn the technology behind this one. Very nice freshwater reel, and you'll see some differences. You'll notice right away that there's an override on that anti-reverse that's driven off the back of the case rather than the side of the case. But form-wise, it's about the same, and feature-wise, about the same too. So this one's operating fine. Scott found this one at a flea market out in the West Coast. And we're going to get started by showing you how to take the reel apart, how to service it, and how to keep this one going. So this one has a axle shaft that needs to be removed from below. We're going to just put this spool off to the side for a moment. We're going to check here. I'm not certain on this one. They made some changes, and sometimes these axle shaft, these handle shafts go through. And we'll see if there's a screw. Indeed, there's a screw here holding it. So if you were to make the mistake of trying to turn this one off, you'd break that shaft. Every now and then you get those. Daiwa likes to hide a screw in there every now and then. So just check. If you're unsure, always take that side cap off and make sure that it is a screw-in handle rather than a through handle that's screwed from the other side. Well, while I'm doing this, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. I cover an awful lot of things related to fishing reels and the fishing reel industry and the various manufacturers and the types of fishing reels. But most of the time, I want to show you how to take your reels apart, how to service them, and how to keep them fishing for a long time to come. The channel is called Second Chance Tackle for a reason. It wants to give that tackle out there a second chance. And if you've got one sitting on the sidelines, one of those that maybe broke at some point or just jammed up on you and it's just wound up on a shelf or in a closet or in a shed, well, this is going to show you how to do those reels so that you can take them fishing again. I hope you enjoy that, and if you do, please subscribe, hit that notification button. You will see the fishing reels that I am servicing, and you'll be able to make a determination as to whether you want to watch that or not. Okay, there's 3 side plate screws that are holding this on. Those have been removed. I check when I do that to make sure that those screws are all the same size. I note if they're not, where the short or the long screws belong. I put those into a parts tray. This is the bottom of a fast food container. And we're going to remove your main gear. And you're going to notice a couple of things here. One of the things you will notice is that it's a completely different design inside than the 308. This one has a main gear. It has a little crosswind arm that's going to drive your axle shaft up and down. It's got a different anti-reverse override, and that's why I take this off when I go to, I put it in the off position when I go to remove it so that we can figure out where that belongs and how to get that off. Okay, once that axle shaft is out, you can remove the arm. Then you can remove the nut that is holding the rotor on. I think that's a 10mm nut, so we're going to have to go to a deep socket here because the throw on that is less than can be handled by a wrench. So we'll go to a deep socket. If you tried to use the wrench, you wouldn't grab the nut. Let's go ahead and take that off. And I'm unsure if this is one of those that screws off or if this is one of those that lifts off. They've made a couple of changes. Well, the way to find that out is to look. If you have squared sides on your rotor, this one has a square side on both sides, then chances are the rotor just lifts off. Some of these have a fully threaded circular piece, and a fully threaded circular piece becomes a twist off. So just be aware of what you got there. All right, we have 2 screws that are holding it on. The first thing you want to do is take a picture. Whenever you go to disassemble a reel, take the pictures to make sure that you know where the pieces line up so that when you go to reinstall the reel, the parts are in the right place. So take your picture of your ramp here and notice that this is at about the direct opposite of the handlebar. Now this one's hard to mess up because there's a little stud over here that's going to be holding that ring, but that's not true all of the time when you have these pinion gear and bearing tie downs. So please make sure that you take the pictures as you go. The other thing that you want to be conscious of, we got a bearing in here, and you want to make sure as you remove this assembly to service that bearing that you don't knock that anti-reverse out of place. That's why I turned that to the off position. There's two small screws that are holding the cap on. Notice that the cap has a lip on it that goes to that ramp. You should be able to remove that. Kind of hard to mess that up in terms of what is up and what is down with that, but it's probably been done. Now we should be able to remove your bearing assembly. This one's a little tight, so when I find tight, what I like to do is I like to flood the area with a penetrating oil. I like to reattach the rotor without that tie down cap, put the nut on, and then use the cap as an extended knob for the cup to pull it. You get the opportunity to rock it, and eventually you get it up and off, like we just did here. Then you can push the rest on the downside after you remove that bearing. And those are your pieces to the upper assembly. And then of course we have the main gear and we have the crosswind arm. And this one seems to be a little bit peened in place here, so you're going to have to rock it a little bit to get that off. This happens when handles get over tightened through nobody's fault of their own. Okay, with a lot of effort, there you go. With a lot of effort that will come out. Then we have our crosswind arm, and then we have a shim washer that goes on the back. So it's a relatively uncomplicated reel. It bears a form factor that is similar to the 308, but very little else, as it's been upgraded and it's been changed. And that's why it's not called the 308, it's called the 3800. So it bears some of the characteristics of the 308, but not a lot. Alright, well, it's been quite some time since this reel's been serviced. There's a lot of dried grease and the like on here. You saw how we had to lever the rotor off to get that done. While I got this here, I'm going to soak that rotor. I'm going to soak the junction with the trip lever and the bail spring. You do not need to remove those if the reel is functioning fine. Okay, we've got most of our pieces. Let's check that bearing. Bearing's spinning nicely. And just load that with oil. I oil bearings, I don't grease them. And let's go ahead and kind of put the process back together again. So check all of your teeth on the pinion gear. Make sure that they're clean. If they're not clean, go ahead and grab a pick. I'm going to use a pick in this case, or a hard brush. Just goes through to clear those channels so that the main gear and the pinion gear intersect nicely and run smoothly. Just like that. All right. That collar can stay on there. We're going to use fishing reel grease. I only recommend fishing reel grease. I know people want to use other greases. Please just go ahead and get the fishing reel grease. They come in small containers, maybe 1 ounce or so. You don't need much grease for a fishing reel. And just go ahead and make the investment. It'll pay off for you big time. I'm going to take the pinion gear then and reinsert that from below. Then we can put our bearing that we've oiled in from the top. We want to make sure that all of that sets up nicely. Once you put that bearing in, go ahead and grab your tie down. Remember how the tie down went now. There's a little bit of grease on here. I want to just clean that case off. North-south with the ramp for the bail trip, just like that. And go ahead and get those 2 screws. This is where the parts tray makes it pretty easy to do. You just have to line up, look for your parts tray. You'll see them. Nice thing with this little fast food container I've been using for a while now is it has 2 sections. That makes 8 corners. And the 8 corners, I kind of put my pieces in different corners for the different assemblies. There's a host of ways that you can organize the parts as you take them off. Some folks like to lay a towel out in front of them, kind of lay it out the way that they took them off. That's wonderful. There's all kinds of ways to do it. Mine is just the way that works for me. I would encourage you to find the way that works for you and to always do that. It's real easy to say, oh, it's only a small piece or part. I'm going to leave it on my table. And next thing you know, you're kind of looking around for it. All right, just set it, check it, make sure that it flips. This one is a little bit tight, and tight usually means that we have a bent bail wire. So I'm going to come back to this in a little bit, and we're going to just check to make sure that everything is okay here. Right now it's we're just going to set that to the side. After we reinstall the balance of it, we'll do that. Actually, we can do it right now. I'm going to shut my camera off, go get a small... Okay, I have a little nut driver, and just as I was saying, keep the pieces out of harm's way while I've got those pieces laying there. So if we're going to pay attention to the bail wire, let's go ahead and remove those other pieces. Well, there's 2 parts of this bail. We'll take this side off first. And that's what I thought. When you see tension in the bail wire, you can see that we're way out here. That needs to sit tight to the frame, and when that happens, generally speaking, the bail has been bent outward. What's the answer? Well, just move it up a little bit, put some pressure back on the bail wire, enough that you can reform it, bring it over. Then we can bring that, I think we're probably a little bit too reformed there. It doesn't take much, and that's why this darn thing tends to get out of sync there. But this should have a much better snap to it now. If it doesn't, we're going to go over and check the spring on the other side. But if you take the tension out of the bail wire, it won't bind as you're going to clip it. All right, let's check this then. I'm going to hit it. And now you got a nicely flipping bail. So that's it. If you're experiencing that flip issue, that's the problem is a lot of times not in the spring. A lot of times it is in that trip. Just like that. All right, fixed. Very good. All right, we're going to take our rotor then. We'll put the rotor back on. We've already oiled the bearing in there. Find the 2 flat spots on the rotor. Post. And we have the washer that goes over it. And we have the rotor nut. That's that 10mm nut. And these are still nice reels. These are not the 308s, but that doesn't mean it's not a nice reel. All right, we're going to just tighten that up. Remember, we used our deep socket. Tighten that up. Give it a spin. Spins nice and freely. And we can move over now and set the other pieces. So we have the main gear. Just like the other one, you want to check the teeth. If you find that there's grease or dirt or debris in those teeth, go ahead and get a hard brush. It can be a wire brush, it can be a toothbrush, a bristle brush, any of those. That's the most efficient way to go ahead and clean out the pieces here. And as you see, I'm brushing it onto the paper towel, and the paper towel collects all of that debris so that it doesn't need to be transferred to the next project. All right, a little more grease. You want to make sure that it gets a healthy dose, but you don't need to overload it. it's only going to spin out with centrifugal force. And we'll get the back of this. This seats right into your case like that. This looks like it's got a lot of old grease and tarnish on it. I'm going to wipe first, and then I'm going to grab a piece of steel wool and just buff it down, make sure it's nice and slippery. I didn't notice any issues on the side of it when we were cleaning it, but that doesn't mean that that stuff can't interfere. So go ahead and clean that up nicely, and it buffed up nicely. Only the lightest amount of grease on this now, because when you put it through the pinion gear, it's going to rub off if there's any surplus to that. Insert your axle shaft, keep the hole of that pointed up, and we're going to grab the crosswind arm. This one's hard to put in correctly because you have a pin that's going to go through the axle shaft. Put a little bit of grease onto the face and around the rim of this, because that's where this crosswind arm is going to ride. Locate the hole and then set it flush on the reel, just like that. There was that one washer now that's going to hold that crosswind arm in place, and it's going to enable you to set the case and have the main gear spin freely. Here's your case. I'm just going to kind of wipe that down right now. A little bit of grease on there, might as well get that off. And then let's go ahead and put that case right back on. Now this case acts as the bushing in the reel, so you don't need to do too much with that. Go to your parts tray, get the 3 screws that belong in there. I've got a kind of a rounded top. It's almost like a taper on it, but it's got a rounded top to it. Kind of the way that the Mitchell screws set. Line those holes up. While I'm doing this, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, if you leave those questions in the comment section, I do try to answer them. My time to answer questions is generally in the morning. So if you leave a question the night before, don't expect an immediate response. I guess never expect an immediate response. But I'll generally answer them in the morning. Hopefully don't delay your project too much. I put a little bit of grease on there just to keep that running fine. Then you just want to put your handle through and find the screw for the other side. This was set up as a left-hand drive. Most reels are. This can be reversed if you want to reverse it to a right-hand drive. And we'll set this up. So one of the things that I would encourage you not to do if you need a quick answer is calling the number on that business card. I am mostly in my shop, and when I'm in my shop, I'm working on reels or doing videos, and that phone is remote, and well, I just don't get a chance to answer it. And then depending on how busy I am during the day, sometimes I don't get to return those calls on a prompt basis, and I hate to disappoint folks. So emails work better than phone calls. That's just kind of the way it is. All right, well, we're going to just put this cap back on now. Hand tighten it. Give it a rub. Just test it. Make sure that everything's working fine. Working beautifully. You notice we put the anti-reverse click back on. Let's just go up top quickly on this one. Show you the drag system. You remove the drag adjuster knob. You'll notice that we have the drag assembly in here. It's held in by a little C-clamp. Go ahead and find a little micro driver or your pick or something. This one's going to be particularly interesting. Slide it in under the cavity, and then you can tap out the washers generally, or you can push the assembly through from the other side. They seem to have been stuck for some time now. We'll get them done. This is where it helps to have some small tools at your hand. There we go, just lift it up that way. I don't think there's much in here. There's probably one washer maybe. Yep, looks like maybe two. Okay, so I've removed the top two washers, and now you can probably push this shaft through. That'll give you access to make it a little bit easier for you to remove the other two washers. And you'll see we have a Teflon washer. We have two hard red washers. We have three metals. And if you were paying attention, you noticed how the stack went. At least I did. You want to clean your cavity there. If there's residuals laying in there, go ahead and use something like a cotton swab to get the balance off. Take that spool shaft in. Sometimes this spring gets stuck. There's a spring-driven mechanism in there. And if it gets stuck, just while you have it off, just put a drop of oil on both sides. That'll help it. Go ahead and put that back on. Make sure that you lodge it all the way in. And then remember your sequence. The first one up was this white Teflon washer. Then there's a D-shaped washer. Now this spool shaft has one flat side, so you need to find the flat side in order to put that D-shaped washer on. These are hard washers next. They don't get anything because they don't absorb anything, so just go ahead and put that next hard washer on. The middle one is called an eared washer. It has points on both sides. That's the one that goes into the slots of the spool. One more hard washer. Continue to press down. One more D-shaped or keyed washer. That goes in. Then you need to push the whole section down so that you can clear the groove and put that retention clip back on. Let's go ahead and do that. Just start from one side. It didn't seem like it had a lot of tension on it, but it does have tension. And that's it. That's how you reinstall and check the drag washers on this system. A lot of folks think that this doesn't have a drag system, or that the drag system is underneath. This is exactly how you do that. Let's put that back on. And there you go. Here's your Garcia 3800. It's the follow-on to the 308. It's a nice size reel, and I think Scott's going to enjoy his flea market find. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please like it. If you want to see more, again, please subscribe. And to everybody, please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.